Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby. I am here with PJ Dillon, cinematographer for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus. And, this series, one of the cool things about this and all the Marvel series, it seems, is that it feels just as cinematic as the MCU films. There's no sort of cut corners or anything when they went to streaming. And so was that the directive from the start to make it just as cinematic as everything else? How did you approach that?
Look, there's no directive as such, but I think that it's Marvel. There's going to be an expectation that the production values are high, and also, like Carrie, the director, and I felt we were sort of continuing a legacy, and we didn't want to let the side down. You know what I mean? So we sort of any pressure really to try to come close to matching what the movies achieved came from ourselves, rather than there was never a directive that you have to make this look like a movie or anything.
Yeah.
But we wanted to respect what had come before, and also we wanted to do justice to ourselves and to the project and to the universe.
And generally speaking, series usually have a different sort of schedule going on. And so, what was the biggest challenge in that sense of getting this to be as cinematic as you wanted?
Exactly what you're hinting at there. I mean, so I guess if we were trying to make 6 TV hours in the time that usually would be allowed to shoot a movie, so we were probably trying to produce 3 times the material in the same amount of shooting days, and probably with less of a budget. So that was a constant challenge. But like what I would have to say is that I think everybody rose to the challenge, like all departments. And at times things felt a bit ragged. We felt like we were under a lot of pressure, and but everyone sort of knew what the end goal was, so we all worked together as best we could.
Yeah.
And hopefully more or less pulled it off.
Yeah, you mentioned the director, Kari Skogland, before,
Yeah.
and I believe you two have worked in the past together on things like Vikings. And was it nice to have someone, a collaborator there, who you already have a history with? What was the process like with her?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, honestly, I wouldn't have been there if it weren't for Carrie. The reason I was there was that she suggested me or recommended me, and so yeah, no, it was great. And Carrie, for a DP, Carrie is like the perfect director, because she's got like a great visual sense. The visuals are important to all directors, but particularly Carrie. She's got a very good eye, like a very strong cinematic eye. So she'll understand. Sometimes there can be sort of creative tension between the director and the DP when you're trying to maybe push something in one direction and the director wants to go in a slightly different direction for different reasons. She and I generally have a relationship where we're sort of both pulling in the same direction usually. So she's great to work with from that point of view.
When you read a script for something like this, I'm always curious of, once you read it, do you immediately get a sense of what type of visual feel and language it's going to have, or does that take a lot of time for you to experiment and figure that out?
It honestly depends on the project. Like sometimes the visual language sort of arrives fully formed as soon as you're reading something. Other projects, it takes a while to find it, and sometimes maybe you don't find it at all. But with this, so I would have come into the process relatively late. Carrie would have been working on it for quite a while before I came on board. She would have had a very good sense of where it was going. As soon as I knew that I would be doing the job, I went back and I re-looked at all the Marvel films and tried to make sure that I was immersed in that visual language. So I think by the day I arrived in Atlanta to start prep on day one, I had a fair idea of the direction we'd be heading. But the really nice thing about any project is that you often set out with preconceived ideas, and sometimes the better work that you do can be the stuff that pushes against that, or challenges that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the other, going back to the other projects, because so much of this story is kind of about the legacy of Captain America, of Steve Rogers, his title, and where it's going to go moving forward. So, did you feel like you needed to sort of respond to the cinematography in those other Captain America films in any way?
I wouldn't say respond, but I would say respect. Like very definitely, like all of those films from the very first one, they're executed at a very high level. Like the production values are fantastic in all of those films. So certainly we would have wanted to try to again respond, not really respond, but definitely carry the tradition on, so that's the reason we chose to shoot widescreen anamorphic, because the films are shot widescreen anamorphic. So we definitely wanted to maintain that visual language. But it is a new project, it is a new story. It's it's for television, not for cinema. So that all of those things play into what you're trying to do. And so you try to I don't know, like continue the legacy, but also put your own imprint on it,
Yeah.
because as creatives, that's what you have to do anyway.
I wanted to talk about one of the most discussed moments from the show, and to me, one of the most horrifying moments was when John Walker, he has the Captain America shield because he's becoming U.S. agent, and he brings it down on this man who hasn't really, may not deserve it, and just brutally murders him with Captain America's shield. How did you approach that scene? There's a lot of iconic imagery, I think, with the camera hovering over the shield as it's coming down, and then as it's bloodstained in Walker's arms. Could you just talk about how you approach that imagery?
I didn't actually shoot that scene because we were shooting in Prague when the first COVID lockdown happened in March of 2019, and we broke up, and then I didn't go back. So there were still a few weeks to shoot, and I didn't go back to do those because of COVID. I couldn't travel, and anyway, so that scene, even though I prepped that scene and sort of knew what we were going to do, I didn't end up shooting it. But I did shoot the next scene, which is the fight between when he arrives into the factory with the bloody shield and all that. So I mean, we would have been very aware of the significance of that and what a huge moment it was, and been very careful about how we would have approached that. But I didn't actually shoot it, so I can't speak about that one.
Well, sticking with John Walker then in that fight scene, he seems to have there's a really seemingly deliberate use of color in this series, and when you go to Walker, it almost it sort of shifts to more grays. How do you approach using lighting and color in that way?
Yeah, look, definitely in terms of there wasn't any deliberate palette for any of the characters, but like certainly, for example, the scenes with Sam in Louisiana, we would have been very consciously trying to make those warm and inviting, and photograph them in a more relaxed way than some of the other stuff. Whereas the stuff with Sebastian, at the beginning when his character is meant to be sort of cold and distant, we would have deliberately made lens choices and color choices to try to reflect that psychological state of mind. And with Walker, there wasn't, I don't know if there was a very conscious color scheme that we ever went with for him. I mean, it sort of depended on what was happening in the scenes. Like certainly, towards the end when he goes before the tribunal, we wanted to make that quite monochrome and stark to, so there would have been for particular scenes, we would have had a very clear idea of what we're trying to do, but there wasn't an overall palette. for any of the characters.
Yeah. Well, there's amazing action sequences in this that rival, any of the other Marvel films, and they just get so busy sometimes because, like for instance, the freight yard scene has Sharon and and Zemo going around, and there's so many people involved at once. What is the key for you for taking that busy sequence and making it sing?
Like preparation really is the key, because usually our time is pretty limited. It was really important, and that's where the Marvel stunt people, the VFX department who previs the stuff, like they really come into their own, and so a lot of that stuff is very carefully prevised, storyboarded, so you have a very clear idea of what it is you're trying to achieve. And then how it normally works is that the main unit will shoot with all the main cast, and then a lot of the stunts, but not by any means all the stunts, but a lot of the stunts will be shot by second unit. So what you tend to do is that the main unit will go and shoot the first couple of days of an action sequence, and then the stunt or the second unit will come and maybe do a couple of more days. So it really is a very collaborative endeavor.
Is there a particular sequence in there that you are really most proud of, where it was quite a challenge and you were thrilled to pull it off?
Yeah, I think the fight sequence at the start of F5, which I mentioned a little while ago, where Walker is confronted by Sam and Bucky, because that one, we only chose the location for that a couple of days before we had to film it. We had other locations that fell through for one reason or another. And it maybe didn't have quite the level of preparedness that some of the other sequences did. And as a consequence, we had to be a little more inventive. But I think and that is the one sequence that the main unit shot everything we shot all of. And I just feel that sort of, it has a kind of a unity of vision, and the whole thing came together quite well, and it feels very complete. So I think that's the sequence I'm most happy with.
Yeah. You've worked on a lot of epics, I would say, with like Game of Thrones and Vikings, and even the Alienist has a very big feel to it. Do you think that experience on those prepared you to sort of kind of fly by the seat of your pants, like in that situation?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that every show has a different dynamic, and like Game of Thrones would have been a show where it was like everything was really like prepared to the minutest detail, so not every show has that. And maybe like something like Vikings would tend to be more make it up as you go along, so there each show has its own dynamic and has its own rewards as a result, like, because there is something very satisfying about having a very clear plan and executing it properly, but there's also satisfaction in sort of, oh my God, what are we going to do, and pulling it off, I think Marvel probably is closer to the Game of Thrones way of doing things, but yeah, you'd hope that your experience on all kinds of projects would you'd be able to lean into that for any situation you encounter, especially if you've been doing it as long as I have. There's something wrong with you if you can't.
Well, considering you have been doing this for a long time and been on many series, I wanted to ask before I let you go, a show like this, you're hired on to sort of like do the whole thing and have your vision be there for the series. But in many instances in TV, you might only get hired for one episode or just a handful of episodes. How do those two experiences compare? Is one more challenging than the other?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's definitely more challenging to have to do the entirety of a series, and mainly because you don't get the same amount of prep, you know what I mean? Because over the course of a show, so you have your whatever it might be 6 or 8 weeks prep at the beginning, but then subsequently as you're shooting, things change, new locations come up, you don't have time to scout them as well as if you were, just prepping to do a shorter block, but it is more rewarding. I mean, I definitely enjoy doing the entirety of the series more than dipping in. That's not to say I don't get satisfaction from dipping in and out of shows I do, of course, but there is something very, even though it's tougher, it's more challenging, it takes longer, you get more frustrated, all of those things. It's definitely more rewarding for me anyway to do the entirety of the show.
Well, I'm sure it was a big challenge on this one, but the end result seems very well worth it. So thank you so much for sitting down with me. Everyone who's out there watching, subscribe to Gold Derby, and PJ, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Sam. Pleasure to talk to you.